With Team of the Season just around the corner, if you guys need FIFA 23 coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. So what's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for one of the best formations in FIFA 23, this being the 4-3-2-1. Now just before we get into today's video guys, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up as it does really help me out. Subscribe to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos like this one, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you are notified when a video is posted. And with all that aside guys, let's get right into today's video. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics. For the defensive style, I like to use this on balance. This is because it gives you the greatest control over your defense, where you're able to press when you need to press, but you're also able to drop off and be a little bit more conservative when you need to be, so it does give you the very much needed control over your defenders. Now moving on to the defensive width, I like to have this on 35. This is so we can primarily defend in a narrow shape, so we can cover all those central areas and block the attacks through the middle. This is the most important thing you need to do in the game, but we don't want to make the width too low in case somebody does try and go down the wing. If it's too low, we're not going to be able to cover those wider areas, so we at least need to have a little bit of width so we're still able to cover the wide areas if an opponent does go down there. Now moving on to the depth, I like to have this on 55. This is so we're not constantly getting pinned back by having like the depth super low, so we're not always going to be under pressure. And then we also don't want it super high, because if the defensive line is always too high, then we can just get through-balled and it's far too easy for your opponent. So I like to go for something in between, where it's neither, you know, a deep defensive line or a super high defensive line. We can kind of pick and choose what we do when it suits us, so it's super nice to have a balanced defensive line. Now moving on to build-up play guys, I suggest having this on balance. This is because it gives you more control when you are building up the play. You can play quickly, you can play slowly, you can do a mixture of both. It really does allow you to mix up how you build up and pick the right pace for you. If you have it on like fast build-up or slow build-up, you're limited to that style and it's not always the best option. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I suggest using direct passing. This is because it's the most meta option you can use. It's super overpowered because it makes your attacking players bunch up against the defenders, meaning you can do the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays which aren't possible with other settings. You also get the extra pass option to guarantee those goals. Now moving on to the attacking width, I like to have this on 45. The reason I do this is because although it's like a narrow formation, we don't want the width to be too narrow to the point where our players are like sat on top of each other when we're going forward, because it's not really efficient to do that. But on the flip side, we don't want a really high width either, otherwise it becomes like a 4-3-3, and if we want a wide formation, we'll just use that. So we kind of go for something in between where it's neither narrow nor too wide. It's really nice and balanced. Moving on to players in box, I like to have these on 5. The reason I do this is so we can commit some players into the box to create chances, but we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we get counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a corner kick routine that I use which requires both of these to be on 1. There is a link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, in the striker position, because it is a one striker formation, I suggest going for a nice well-rounded player. This is because you have to compensate for the fact that there's one striker instead of 2, so where you could get the balance between 2 strikers in a 2-striker formation, for example making one a creative player and the other a finisher player, you have to get all that balance in the one player. So I suggest just going for a really nice well-rounded striker so you can really get the most out of the player in this position. Moving on to the right forward and the left forward, I suggest you guys use winger style players. These are players with good skill moves, good dribbling stats, good pace of course, players that are able to shoot, dribble, pass, basically do a bit of everything in attack. You're not going to want slow clunky players, and you're not going to want players without any good creative ability. You also need these players to be able to finish because they are like your second, they're like your second type of forwards, if that makes sense. You've got your main striker and then these two are the other ones that are going to finish up the chances. So so it's important that they can shoot as well. Now moving on to the left centre mid, I like to go for a more box-to-box style player. So you're going to want somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, so you get the maximum contributions in attack and defence, but just make sure that this player is a nice well-rounded card so that they can do a bit of everything. Moving on to the middle centre mid, I suggest using a more defensive minded player. This is somebody that's going to stay back, break up the play and really add defensive security for you guys. So you're going to want somebody with a medium high work rate if you can get it, so you get the maximum contributions in defense and they're not too bothered about going forward. Moving on to the right centre mid, I suggest you guys use an actual attacker, because this player is not actually going to play as a centre mid in game, so you don't have to worry about them being super good in defense because they're not really going to have to do it all that much. So just go for an actual attacker here, somebody like an Mbappe, a Neymar, Messi, any of those types of players. Really just use an actual attacker. Now moving on to the fullbacks, I like to go for a balance between the two. So in the left back position, I go for Roberto Carlos. This is somebody that is actually going to attack for us and really give us more options going forward. And then my right back is Cafu, who's a little bit more defensively sound, but maybe lacks that ability going forward. As for the centre backs and the keeper, these just need to be the meta players that you can get, and they just basically need to be as good as possible. There's not too much to say about them. Now moving on to the player instructions, guys. On the striker, I just have him on stay central and then mixed attack. We have him on stay central because it's super important that he does stay in the central areas, especially since he is our only striker. We always need him to be in the correct position where the striker should be. We don't want him drifting out wide. We also have him on mixed attack as opposed to getting behind, as you get a lot more out of the player this way. They're not just limited to always having to chase those through balls and running in behind, because they can offer you a lot more on mixed attack. They can get more involved in the build-up play, and you just get a lot more out of the player by doing this, in my opinion. Now moving on to the right forward, I have him on stay central and getting behind. We have him on stay central, so he doesn't focus on drifting out too wide to the point where he plays like a winger from a 4-3-3, and he focuses on those pockets of space that are in the central areas, the ones that you can exploit to really create those dangerous chances. You can still drag him out a little bit wider when you need to, but it just means he's not going to get carried away with hugging the sidelines. We also have him on getting behind, so he is always looking to make those runs and really break through the opponent's defensive line. Now moving on to the left forward, we just have him on comeback on defense. Now this is to make the formation defend in a 4-4-2. Now the reason we do this is because the 4-4-2 is a much more superior defensive formation than the 4-3-2-1, because we have two banks of 4, which is really hard to break through. If we defend in the bog standard 4-3-2-1 formation, we're not really able to cover many wide areas because of the lack of width in the midfield. So by having one of these players on comeback, it means you're going to have an extra player in midfield, and it's going to be very difficult for your opponent to play through. Moving on to the left centre mid, the more box-to-box style player, we have him on default settings and cover centre. We have him on default settings because we don't really want to restrict him all that much. He's got a bit of a free role in the team, so we kind of just let him do whatever he wants to do. The only important thing is that we have him on cover centre, so he does defend as one of the centre mids in the 4-4-2 shape. Now moving on to the middle centre mid, the more defensive minded player, we have him on stay back while attacking, stay on the edge of the box for cross and cover centre. We have him on stay back because he is obviously a more defensive minded player, so we want him to stay back and keep us safe at the back. And then we have him on stay on the edge of the box for cross because let's say the AI accidentally takes him on a run forward, he's not going to go and commit himself into the penalty area. We also have him on cover centre, so he does defend as one of the centre mids in the 4-4-2 shape. Now moving on to the right centre mid where we use an actual attacker, we have him on get forward, get into the box for cross and cover wing. We have him on get forward because he is an actual attacker, so we do want him to go forward and join the attack. We have him on get into the box for cross, so he's not hesitant on committing into the penalty area and getting involved in all those chances. If we have him on balanced crossing runs, they can be a little bit static and he's not always that useful. We also have him on cover wing, so he does defend as a right mid in the 4-4-2 shape. This is why I said it's not super super important to have like a centre mid player here, because the player in this position is not actually going to play as a centre mid, if that makes sense. So the way this team sets up is the back four is the same, and then we've got the Di Maria left mid, Pogba left centre mid, Jorginho right centre mid, and Chiesa right mid. That's just how this works. Moving on to the left back, my more attacking minded fullback, we have him on balanced attack and overlap. The reason we do this is because we can add a bit of width to the team, because this is still a narrow formation, so sometimes we need a wider option to you know, help us out going forward. The overlap run type means he's going to make the overlapping runs to add extra width as opposed to running narrow. As for the more defensive minded fullback, I have him on stay back while attacking and overlap. We have him on stay back while attacking, so we always at least have 3 defenders at the back, but if he does go forward by us pressing L1 to send him forward, he'll make the overlapping runs to add extra width. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, these are on default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah guys, they're my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-3-2-1. If you have enjoyed or found this useful, please be sure to drop this a thumbs up, sub to the channel if you are new so you never miss out on any videos, and don't forget to turn on notifications. But yeah guys, that is everything. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.